You're listening to Errol Parker and Clancy Overall, editors of the Betoota Advocate, on Desert Rock FM.
Hello listeners and welcome to the show wherever you are here in the Diamantina Shire or around the world. Thank you for tuning in to another week of the Betoota Advocate radio show here on Desert Rock FM. My name is Errol Parker.
And I'm Clancy Overall. Thank you for joining us today, coming live to you out of Koala Mattress Studios in downtown Betoota, the Old City District.
We have a very talented guest coming into the studio today for a chat.
That's right, Errol, we do. Someone who, like myself, had some horrific injuries, crippled their career early on in the piece. Rugby league, of course.
What could have been, hey Clancy? She's achieved a hell of a lot though. Played for her state, her country, and excelled at all levels of the game. Not just some scouts talking her up for a possible trial down there at the Redcliffe Dolphins.
Yeah, well, some Balmain coaches were going to be at that trial as well. Errol, but yes, our guest today is an elite athlete who has achieved a lot more than me. I will admit. She's also a television and media personality and a school teacher as well.
All right, I think the cat's out of the bag now, mate. Her name is Allana Ferguson. You've probably seen her either playing rugby league or hosting it there on Channel 9.
Yeah, she's been a fresh young face in the Channel 9 rugby league team and is currently playing an integral role in the NRL Women's comp, getting it off the ground.
Yeah, she's been heavily involved in growing the women's game around the country. But just before we duck into that chat, a quick reminder that Clancy and I are going on a roadshow tour around the country in November and December this year.
Yes, we will be lifting the veil on the operations of this newspaper, in the newsroom, all the things that we do to get the hot press out to you. We'll be talking about our upward trajectory as our rival media companies fall or merge with Channel 9, which is equivalent to falling, I guess. It's sure to be a night of laughter, tears, and irrational outrage.
The show is going to 13 venues across the country, so jump online and visit www.betootaadvocate.com/roadshow or go to the episode notes to find the details and buy your tickets there before they sell out, inevitably. But let's move on to today's guest.
Yes, here we are with Allana Ferguson. Thank you for joining us today. Busy time of the year for you, Allana.
Yeah, very busy. Exciting time of the year, though. But yeah, there's a lot happening, especially in the rugby league world.
Yeah, and quite a year for rugby league in terms of much less kind of off-field stuff this year. It's all been about, the game's getting more and more exciting. Obviously, that Rabbitohs and Storm match was probably one of the best of the year on the weekend.
Oh, it was huge.
Yeah.
It was kind of like an early grand final.
Yeah, it was top tier, and there's been football like that throughout the year. Everyone seems to be sometimes there'll be years when rugby league has a lot of off-field, and that's not one of these years, I don't think.
No, I don't think so. And I think there's just so many teams that are likely to go in the winning, I guess, to be premiers this year, which makes it exciting. But also for the fans, it's exciting for them to turn up because no one really knows what's going to happen week in, week out. There's been so many different surprises with teams turning up and their different performances. But yeah, very exciting for rugby league. All of the games and the top 8 have been so close this year.
And we've seen over the last kind of 5 years, almost decade, rugby league's really turned it up with fairy tales. You've had the bunnies coming through with their first one in something 43 years, and then there was the Cowboys with their first ever, and then the Sharks with their first ever.
And then a couple of years before that, they had the Dragons won their first one.
Yeah.
After the merger with the Illawarra Steelers, which a little bit of Wayne Bennett magic there.
Mm.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, everything Wayne was touching at the time was turned to gold. Yeah,
yeah.
And he did well with Newcastle. Have you seen a change in supporter base and kind of momentum behind the game since we started seeing these kind of premierships that everyone wanted to see happen?
Yeah, well, I think even just for myself living in the Shire, I've been a diehard Sharkies fan forever. So 2016 was massive. But even just living there in the thick of it and seeing, I guess, the supporters day in, day out, you wake up in the morning, you go and get your coffee. And throughout the tail end of that year when the Sharks were playing great footy and they did look very likely to win the premiership, people just weren't taking their clothes off.
Yeah.
They had their hats on the whole time. They were walking around in their Sharks jerseys. And it didn't matter if they lost or if they won. They just had their Sharks gear on around the clock. And I think it just brings a little bit of heart and passion back into those local areas. And I'm sure that it would be the same. I can't say the same for if the Cowboys win or when the Dragons won, because I'm not there all the time. But certainly in the Shire, when the Sharks
when they got to turn the porch light off.
Yeah,
Turn the porch light off.
But yeah, no one wanted to take their Sharks gear off. It was really cool. People were painting their fences. They had balloons up. They had flags going. But it was even before the final series, during the lead up, and then even once they won, no one wanted to take it down. So I think it just ignites a little bit more passion and a bit of heart, and back into the fans and back into the local clubs as well, because that's really important to take footy back to the local clubs, and that's what gets kids inspired to want to play, I guess.
Tell us about your early days playing. Did you come from OzTag? Is that you were an OzTag player, a pretty prominent one as well?
The first game I ever played was rugby league.
Right.
Yeah, so I started just before I turned 5.
Yep.
I had an older brother who played footy, so I grew up on the sideline watching him and basically just begged mum and dad. I've got 3 brothers, 2 younger, 1 older. So I watched Dane play footy and got on there from as soon as I could, as soon as I got the nod. Yep. I think mum and dad sort of thought that, we'll say yes, we'll give her a go and she won't like it. But that certainly wasn't the case. I loved it from the first game. And then I played up until the under-12s. Yep. But during that stage, I did play OzTag as well, a bit of touch footy. Mm-hmm. I liked OzTag probably the most because it related a little bit more, I guess, in terms of gameplay to rugby league. But then I played to the under-12s and was basically shattered when it got taken away from me.
Tell us about that, because obviously the boys' bodies are changing as well, and you're playing with, and there's kids probably jumping the gun on puberty, so there's probably some beards getting around, when at that age.
There seriously was.
Yeah.
I think in terms of the NRL, when they made that decision, the under-12s is the perfect age, because for me growing up playing with the boys, I was always the only girl playing, except for my final year, but in terms of being on the same playing field, I guess, with the boys, it was always even. And it would just depend on your body shape. Like you were either big or you were small, or you were fast or you were strong or whatever it was. But I thought it was always pretty similar, me as opposed standing next to the boys. But there was a point where the boys did hit puberty. And there was actually one match in particular that it affected me, was our school team. We made it through to state. And we made, in the semi-final, actually, we came up against Ashcroft.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, righto.
And I know, said,
Yeah.
And there were some boys in that side that looked like they could have been 5 years older. They were taller than my dad and just as fast as anyone on the field. So that was pretty...
bit of tongue and
that
Thor.
Was pretty, that was pretty eye-opening. But other than that, like, they nailed it. It was fine. At any other game that I'd played in, it was always pretty fair. Yeah. Then the next year, that is when the boys start getting facial hair and everything kind of changes. But up until that point, I think that, you either love rugby league or you don't. You either put your body on the line or you don't. It's pretty fair game.
So there was no pathway then for girls to really continue on.
Yeah, no, there wasn't. There was nothing then, which was for me. I've always grown up literally obsessed with rugby league. I played it, but also on the weekends, I'd sit with my dad on the lounge and watch the footy. Just loved it. My 3 brothers, they might watch for 10 minutes and then they'd duck off and go and find something better to do. But I'd always loved doing it. But actually when we won state that year, that was my last game ever of rugby league in the juniors, and I didn't watch the NRL for 2 years because I was so shattered. Because I just couldn't... I couldn't understand why they would take that away from me. Yeah. And I just thought it was so unfair because that was me. That was who I was. That was what I loved doing. It was all I wanted to do, really. And being a kid, like I was 11 years old, I just was so upset. I didn't understand it, but there was nothing for me to go to.
There was just nothing. There was like you couldn't find.
So there was no alternatives. Like you couldn't go to Union or to...
I could have probably gone to Union, driven to Sydney, but like if you grow up in a rugby league family, it's what you love.
Yeah, it's hard to cage up, isn't it?
I've played rugby sevens and I gave it a crack and it was fun, but I didn't love it. I didn't feel the same for rugby as what I do for rugby league, and that was the part of me that was missing. That was what I missed.
You don't often see a league player move over to Union for less money, do you?
No, definitely not. Because it's just ingrained in you, especially if that's what you've always grown up with and that's your passion.
Yeah. We spoke to Sam Kerr earlier in the year, and she was saying how...
She's a legend.
Yeah, AFL for her, there was a point when she, I'm going to now have to become the best soccer player in the world. You know, she said, but had I had that option, I'd be the best AFL player, in that kind of world. And how she was forced to do that, as a great athlete.
Yeah.
And it's almost crossing over, for someone who's grown up playing rugby league, it's probably even worth playing a completely different sport because there's two different minds for rugby league and rugby union. And, you could have gone into anything, could have become a swimmer after that and channeled that. But you
absolutely.
just kept chipping away. Where were you for those couple of years? What were you doing?
So when I stopped playing footy, do you mean when I was younger?
Yeah.
I always played Oztag. So I think Oztag was kind of created. It was a pretty new game when I was about 7 or 8. Mm-hmm. So I'd played Oztag the whole way through. I played a bit of touch footy, but just didn't really love it. But yeah, I just kept playing Oztag, and through school, to be honest, I played any sport. I just did absolutely everything. Just so I could get the day off school pretty much and keep going through. But I played cricket, I played softball, I played every code of footy, I played soccer on Sundays. I kind of just did everything. But
so you were one of those kind of local kids that would
I was the tomboy that ripped into everything.
And you were, you were going to districts, and then you were going to state, and then you were,
that was me.
Yeah.
Just and whatever I could. Never for shot put, though.
Yeah.
Just for the running races. Long jump.
No. So your parents were doing a lot of driving too?
Oh, I feel sorry for my parents thinking back to it now. But we had some pretty cool times.
Yeah.
We'd always have touch footy tournaments out in parks. So Mum and I would go on road trips. It'd be pretty cool. But yeah, Mum and Dad were the best. They always came to everything, which I'm super grateful for.
Is there a competitive streak as well where they're kind of, more so than just your love of the game? It's kind of like they really love seeing,
Mum and Dad?
Yeah, you come home with some silverware.
Oh, I don't know. They're pretty chilled, actually.
Yeah.
They're pretty chilled. They just love...
They're not tennis parents.
No, they're not.
No.
And they're not those parents on the sideline that are yelling things out. They'll, at the end of the game, just say, great game, did you have fun? That'd be their first question.
Yeah.
Dad would always offer a little bit more in terms of analysing the game and what happened, but always very positive, to the point where I'd go, Dad, can you just tell me 3 things that I did wrong so I can fix them?
Yeah, right.
And he'd be like, okay, well, there was this. But it took a lot to get out of him. But yeah, no, they were great.
And then when so you started into the professional realm, how did you jump into that?
For playing footy?
Yeah.
Yeah, after school.
When did you reignite the love, or did you get the tap on the shoulder? When was?
Well, so what happened was I actually got scouted and played rugby sevens for a little bit.
Yeah.
And it was about 18 months out from the Olympics, and that was when they were recruiting and they were going to different codes. So I think they'd come to possibly one of our international matches for Oztag and watch those. And I kind of got the tap on the shoulder, and I joined the rugby sevens program. And I we went to China with the Australian team, and I did my knee there. So I snapped my ACL over in China.
That was your first one, wasn't it?
No, that was my third one.
Third, jumping, Jesus.
Yeah.
So you'd done a lot of that stuff just playing at club level?
Yeah, so I did... My first ever ACL was actually playing touch football for New South Wales.
Yeah.
My second ACL was playing Oztag. And my third ACL was playing rugby sevens.
Yeah.
And then from that was a really big game changer for me, especially mentally, just because I'd finally gotten back to playing contact sport. And actually at this point in time, there were rugby league competitions. This was kind of the first year that it was all happening.
It wasn't underground anymore.
Yeah. So, but I decided to give rugby sevens a crack. And when I'd done my knee over there, it kind of just put everything into perspective for me. I was like, okay, this was a great opportunity, and I loved it for the time that I was there, for the 6 months or something. It was pretty full on, but I did really enjoy it. It was very testing because there were so many new things that I had to pick up on. But for me, it just put footy into perspective and what I was doing and just enjoying life, really, because I've only ever played footy because I love it. So, yeah, I just decided to rip into rehab, and I put so much time and effort into training, full body transformation. Like, I look like a different person. I was certainly a lot fitter and faster, which is pretty uncommon to come back from your third knee reconstruction and be better than what you were before it. But I think it was that just came back to the time and effort that I put in, and you know, relearning how to run, relearning how to change direction, just everything from scratch and doing everything absolutely perfectly to the last tee. But yeah, all I wanted to do from that point, from literally laying on the field, I looked up in the sky and I was like, well, I know I've done it. I'm going to be playing rugby league next year.
Yeah.
And that was it for me. And to be fair, the last Rico that I had was actually probably the easiest to get through in terms of my recovery and my rehab, just because I hadn't felt that motivation for a long time, because I knew what I could get back to.
How old were you when you did your first ACL?
15.
15.
Yeah.
Right.
Which is pretty tricky because as a 15-year-old, I'd never had to have 12 months off sport.
Yeah.
Right, so that was a year off.
Yeah,
was
so
it?
recovery is 12 months.
Really? That's just
every time.
for an ACL.
And what were you doing? Were you getting into video games, or you just...
No, I got into coaching actually.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And I started coaching, well, the first year I assistant coached the 16s Aussie team. And then after that took over and started doing the 18s myself. The first year I probably didn't appreciate it enough because I was a little bit peeved off that I had to coach and I couldn't play.
Yeah.
But as soon as I got back to playing, I grew a passion for coaching as well, because I realised how much I enjoy it and how much I love helping people out there on the field and analysing the game, changing things, and then seeing it work is a pretty cool thing. So that's kind of when my passion for coaching, I guess, grew, when I was able to appreciate that I could play and coach, and that coaching was a choice, I guess. Yeah.
And did you have a favourite player growing up, rugby league wise?
Yeah, Joey.
Joe Johnson.
Yeah.
Joey.
And are you seeing that now happening, where young girls can say they have a favourite player that isn't a guy?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And to me, that's the most exciting thing. And I love that my favourite players were boys, and I would still love that if girls had favourite players that were boys. But I also love that there's boys out there that have favourite players that are the females out there, and same with the women.
Particularly in rugby. You look at the Aaliyah Green and
Charlotte Caslick running out
stuff.
there. Yeah, that's what you just have. I just love that people can acknowledge athletes and for who they are and what they're doing on the field.
Yeah.
But certainly for me, I never had that choice. So the fact that that's even possible now it's really exciting. To be honest, it kind of warms my heart. Like, I get tingles thinking about it. I got a message off my friend this morning, a picture message, and she'd driven past and saw 4 of the women, one from each of the NRL teams, on a billboard. And I literally, my tears started building up in my eyes because I was just so proud, and I was like, look where we are now. Like, this is so cool. Little girls get to drive past this every day and see them up there. How amazing is it?
And do you think it's as a whole doing wonders for rugby league? I mean, we've seen it. You've seen it in AFLW has given the Aussie rules a kick. What are you seeing on, because you're out and about, you're on the ground, you get to see the game change as it does.
Yeah.
What kind of changes are you seeing?
I think overall it turns rugby league into a family game.
Yeah.
Everyone has a reason to go to the footy. So for me, that's probably the biggest thing, and the most exciting thing is, especially when the women's games are played before the men's, everyone has a reason to go there, which is really cool. But also just getting that little bit of attention, I guess, and getting those big games and on those big fields and on free-to-air TV, it's just exposing the fact that women can play. But in terms of rugby league benefiting from that, it's enormous. It's enormous for sponsors. It's enormous for little kids at home. It's enormous for growing grassroots, which is the most important thing. But I think it's had a positive influence, on every aspect that they've included. I can't see any negatives with it. And I think that that'll only continue to rise as the game grows, and also as more players come and join. Because essentially what you want is, and the aim for us, is to get little kids, boys and girls, to sign up and play the game that we love and just get involved, because we know how much you get out of the game, whether it be mates at training, playing against your opposition, learning new people, getting to travel, but you're playing for a reason and you're putting your body on the line for the person next to you. So I think just getting more people to the game, getting more people to see, and then boys and girls involved in the game, that's what it's all about.
Do you recall, I mean, regardless of kind of injuries, the toughest match you ever played? Would it have been a Jillaroo's kind of match? Do you remember?
Or State of Origin.
Yeah.
Yep,
Yeah.
State of Origin. So it was the first year that we won. The first year I ever played, we drew 4-all, and before that, Queensland had won for 17 years in a row.
Yeah.
So the first year was tough. 4-all was really tough, but the year after that, the year that we won, that was the hardest game of rugby league I've ever played. I actually didn't even get to celebrate too much because as soon as the hooter went, I was in the bathroom throwing up for 2 hours because I was just got so beat, but it was so worth it.
Yeah.
And you literally just leave everything on the field in a State of Origin game. There are no words for it. It's so physical. It's brutal, but it's also just the best thing that I've probably ever done. And just to give so much of yourself for your teammates, I guess, and literally leave the field knowing that you left absolutely everything out there, it's a pretty cool feeling.
Well, throwing up, that's kind of marathon type behaviour.
Oh, I was
Yeah.
a target. I made 46 tackles that game. I was a definite target. Get the blondie on the edge.
Yeah, yeah.
But anyway, it didn't work. We won.
Yeah, you
Happy
got up.
days.
Now, can you tell us a little bit about moving into your career in media? Not everyone has that opportunity. Definitely not, in both genders. There's only room for so many kind of media personalities. You've got a knack for it. But what did you have planned after like your 16 knee reconstructions and ACLs? What was your plan? Was you?
I haven't had a plan.
Yeah,
My
right.
plan has been to just love everything that I do. And when I finished school, I went to uni. I became a PE teacher, essentially because I didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew that I wanted to do something in sport, but I couldn't pinpoint what that was, as most 18-year-olds can't.
Yeah.
So I still went to uni and I did my degree, and I've been teaching ever since.
Right.
Love it. Still love going to school. I still kind of try and get there a day or two a week. But in terms of a big plan, I haven't had one,
Yeah.
just because I've enjoyed everything that's happening along the way. I also prayed that I didn't do my knee again.
Yeah.
I knew if I had have done my other knee, if I had have done my right knee, not my left knee this time, I'd still be playing.
Yeah.
I would have been able to get a knee reconstruction and keep going, but it was just the fact that it was my left knee. So to be fair, I didn't have too much of an end goal other than my goals were all just around growing the game, enjoying what I'm doing, traveling, making friends, being in love, just doing everything that I could, and making the most of time. But as soon as I'd done my knee, it was a pretty big shock.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, something's got to happen here. But I was fortunate to get my foot in the door before that happened.
Yeah.
The first time that I'd, I guess, been asked to go on TV, which is essentially where it all happened, was after my Auckland Nines debut.
Yeah.
And so it was the first time that I played for Australia. So for me, it was pretty massive. And I just had to do a couple of interviews when I was over there. I had a couple of decent games, I guess. So I got picked out of the crowd to do those interviews. And as a result of that, I was asked to go on the Sunday footy show on Channel 9 when I got home, and then the Thursday night footy show as well. And I was really uncomfortable with it, to be honest, especially given that I was always the smallest person on the field. So, and I had blonde hair.
Yeah.
So I was already a massive target. And I'm just a huge tomboy that loves footy and doesn't want to do anything else. So the first time that I was asked, I was pretty hesitant. I didn't want to do it. I was kind of like, I've got enough attention drawn to myself. I just want to play football.
Yeah.
But I got talked into doing it the Sunday footy show. And it was
Who
actually...
were you on there with? Was it Sterlo?
Yeah, Freddie was on there.
Yeah.
Sterlo was on there. Pretty cool, because I grew up watching them and absolutely idolising them, which was amazing in itself. That was probably the draw card to get me on there.
Yeah. I get an autograph or
Seriously, what do I get out of this? Just a photo would be fine. And then the next day I actually was just in Woolies getting the groceries, and a dad came up to me, and I remember exactly where I was. I was in aisle 4, I was getting some cereal, and a dad came up to me and he said, "Hey, I saw you on the show yesterday," and they showed some highlights from Auckland Nines. And he said, "My daughter's been asking me for years to play rugby league and I never let her, but I'm going to now."
Oh, right.
And for me, even now speaking about it, like I have tingles going down my spine, because I was like, oh,
Yeah.
well, that's what it's all about, and
growing
that's
the
what
game.
this can do.
Yeah.
So I haven't necessarily ever been comfortable with the thought of being on TV, but for me it was just about flicking that switch and making it about the bigger picture, and
you're not a
certainly not
journalist.
myself, because turning
Yeah.
up there, I'm not comfortable with it. I don't like hair and makeup. But then, looking at the other side of things, people are going to start playing now, especially little girls. It's all about growing the game and giving those girls the opportunity that, some of us never had and things to come. So it put it into perspective pretty quickly for me, and I enjoy it more each time just because I get that little bit more comfortable with what I'm doing.
Yeah. Do you find it gets easier to be on television, like the more you do it?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. I even now, going from last weekend to this weekend, I'll be a little bit more comfortable.
Yeah.
I guess the best thing for me is just remembering that it's about football. I'm not being asked about politics or anything.
Is it harder
it's all being asked about what I know, and I totally understand the game and I know everyone that's playing, so it's pretty cool.
Is it harder than playing a game of rugby in front of all these people?
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah.
Because playing footy comes naturally
Yeah,
to me.
yeah.
It's all I've ever done. It's what I know.
Yeah.
Speaking in front of crowds or to a live audience or with people in the background shouting when people are trying to talk in your IFB, they're telling you you've got 10 seconds to go.
Yeah.
You forget what the question was. That certainly doesn't come naturally, but again, I think it just keeps coming back to thinking about the bigger picture. And I do, once I settle down and once I get a little bit more comfortable, like I enjoy it so much. The people that I work with are amazing. As you said, Sterlo, Joey, Freddie, Lockyer, Wally Lewis. Like I get to work with the best of the best and talk footy with them, which is what I love doing.
And it's good to have a female personality that's played because there's plenty of journalists, and they're great and they know the stuff, they know the theory. But you've been out there and you've played it in practice, so it is good. And that's probably further to promoting the game, right? You actually,
I think so.
When I was playing, you can say that. I can remember when I was playing.
Yeah, it's cool too now that the women's comp's on, and Channel 9 we covered the Origin game and now we're covering the women's NRL. It is really cool because I've either trained with them or played against them, and you know their nicknames, you know their backstories, and they're the kinds of things that I've always enjoyed through the commentary, listening to the men talk about, is just those little things, those little personal touches that they have to add and to contribute to the conversation rather than just calling the football game. So for me, I feel very lucky. I guess it was just timing and me doing my knee again whilst that was devastating because my whole career was over.
I should clarify to the listeners, it wasn't 16. That was an exaggeration. She didn't do 16 ACLs.
Just 4.
Just 4.
But yeah, it's just opened another door in what I'm doing. I am really loving it. It's really cool.
Now, you said that rugby league with the inclusion of the women's has become more of a family kind of thing, and not just the game, the actual sports media landscape's changing a lot as well, including what we just spoke about. How do you find that world as a woman in a predominantly kind of a lot of the stuff you're going to be talking about is men's football. Obviously it's changing, but how do you find that you just know the game so well that you're you
that's not the part that I'm uncomfortable with.
Yeah.
And I've grown up in a man's world because I've always grown up playing footy.
Yeah.
So I'm certainly not uncomfortable with that part. The thing that I feel most comfortable about is talking about football and playing football. So I guess it just comes back to that. I just feel very fortunate and very lucky to, I guess, have stepped in at the right time. Yeah. Because if it wasn't me, it's going to be someone else. And I want there to be other people to join it and to keep growing, because for me as a young girl, I would have loved to have had those players out there to aspire to, but certainly for young girls out there that want to get into the media and that's their aspirations, they then have women to aspire to as well. So, I mean...
It's not just Sterlo and Fatty eating chilies on a panel anymore.
No, there's a girl in there giving them rib punches to egg them on.
Yeah. Now, we're talking about... a lot of stuff we've been writing about on Betoota this week involves the off-field, and like I said before, everyone's been behaving. But there was a little bit of hysteria and a little bit of a vortex that everyone got caught in last week with the Bulldogs players.
Yeah.
It was a big fine, though.
Yeah, it was a big fine. It was a big fine, and some might say excessive. You've been in that world too, and I'm sure... And you don't have to go into it too much.
That's lucky.
The women's have Mad Mondays as well.
The women are worse than the men's, let me tell you.
I can imagine, Sweet Caroline, that's what the boys were playing. What did you think of that? Do you think that might have been a bit excessive? I know that no one you worked for was really blasting them, but the media was.
Well, they're always going to be looking for another story.
Yeah.
And it is a shame that it gets taken off the game because I think that's the biggest thing that... I don't know, the negativity, it's not necessary.
Yeah.
They've just gone through, like for a rugby league player to put your body on the line through pre-season, through all of those matches, I think a celebration at the end is warranted. The fact that they were in the spotlight, there probably could have been a couple of decisions that they may have been able to make that could have been a bit smarter, which
Put
would
some
just
garbage
be in
bags
between
over the
four
windows.
walls. Yeah, in between four walls, no windows.
Yeah, that's where.
But I think they're pretty hard done by.
Yeah.
They deserve to celebrate just like anyone else. They don't get too much of those opportunities through the season. They put everything into it, and yeah, it's tough to watch. I know there's plenty of stories behind the scenes of everyone piping up, saying, you know, how unlucky it was and that it was tipped off and whatnot. So I think it's a shame for them for that to be the case. But again, if you don't want anyone to see anything, four walls, no windows.
Four walls, no windows, and don't host it within 5 kilometres of every media outlet in the country. But one thing we would say then, and it used to be an attitude in professional sport, is, you know what, it might seem excessive and it might seem like it's they're overdoing it, but when you are essentially a robot playing football, training day in, day out for an entire year, maybe a little bit of a bender is a good little recharge or a good little reset.
Team bonding.
Yeah, particularly heading into the off season, it's good to kind of just let off some steam. And did you find that with your like low key, non-eventful kind of
so boring?
Yeah, boring Mad Mondays that you did.
I think to be honest, I think team bonding is one of the most important things. And if you can put everything into a season and come out the end of it and celebrate, then that's the best thing. It's a group. You need to be a group of mates, I guess, and it's work for them. But they all need to be on the same page, and they get through so many of their struggles. And you know, you miss out on a lot when you're a full-time athlete. You also have a pretty cool life, but you do miss out on a fair bit. And then the things that you miss out on, you're with these people every other minute of the day. So I think team bonding, coming together at the end of it, celebrating, getting through. We survived another year. Let's get ready for next year. I think it's really important. Yeah.
Tell us about what it was like to play for the Sharks. You grew up supporting the Sharks.
Yeah.
You're from the Shire, and you were lucky enough. That was one of the teams that were running a women's side, and there's still, like, you know, kind of one of the more prolific women's sides in Cronulla.
Yeah.
How was that?
To be honest, a dream come true.
Yeah.
I have a picture at home that I drew when I was little, of me in a Sharks jersey, and I've always been and I think it's something that my parents instilled in me, was to always write down your goals. And I'm talking little, I must have been 6 or 7, because the picture that I drew is below average.
Yeah.
But I can make out that it's a Sharks jersey. But, you know, writing those things down forever and having those images in your head, for that to actually come true was mind-blowing. I still kind of don't even believe it. But the second that I put that jersey on and I remember warming up for our first game, it was like it just fit better than everything else. And I wasn't even emotional. I was just like, could not wipe the smile off my face. From ear to ear, so happy just that day was actually able to happen. But a massive, I guess, thank you deserves to be given to the Cronulla Sharks, because the NRL wouldn't run the competition. They actually made a statement when it was all happening that they wouldn't run a competition until 2020.
Right.
So the Cronulla Sharks were the first club to ever give us women's NRL contracts.
Yeah, right.
And that just meant that instead of us paying our own rego, buying our own boots, buying our own gear, just having the one coach that doesn't really have... has just coached club footy, in a sense, to then being completely supported, getting paid to play footy, but then everything else on top, the coaches, the welfare, all of the staff supporting us, just little things like gym memberships. That was enormous, and they had to do that on a club level because the NRL wouldn't do it.
Do you think the fact that they had you in the back of their minds as well, they thought that, like, you know, with experienced players so you know, loyal to the Sharks, that they just knew they could do it? Could they see the writing on the wall?
I was actually a part of the conversations 12 months beforehand. So there was a core group of us pushing for this to happen and making the club see and believe that it was possible. So I think I might have put that or helped put that into their heads possibly. But it was always a no-brainer.
Yeah.
And especially on clubland, even in the real world, you always need sponsors. You need money to make anything happen. It can be a dream, but you need people to believe in it and to invest in it. And I think that's what our women's team brought to the Cronulla Sharks was more possibilities, more opportunities. They were running a business, but they also saw that the product that we could sell essentially on the field was going to work and that they believed in it. So for us, just playing and training, that gave us a lot to train for. It was a very positive thing, very exciting that they did believe in that as well. And then, it forced the NRL to make that decision to bring forward the women's NRL competition.
Well, the inaugural season was this year.
Yeah.
And there was one very glaring omission from that competition. Mm-hmm. And it ended up a little bit north of where the Shire is. It ended up at the Dragons. How did that happen?
There's not too many great explanations. I haven't been given a good enough explanation. Mm-hmm. Basically, all that was come out and said was that it was because of geographical spread.
Mm-hmm.
But the Roosters have one too, don't
Correct.
they? Right.
And also, the Roosters don't have an affiliated competition or club team, whereas we at the Cronulla Sharks did.
Yeah.
We had Cronulla Caringbah, but then also all the junior competitions from the girls all the way through to the women's established. So it makes absolutely no sense to me because the pathway had been created in Cronulla. Mm-hmm. The product had been created in Cronulla, and then it was turned back for no reason other than geographical spread. So it was a pretty massive slap in the face.
Yeah.
It might be worth an investigation really by two of the Herald's more competent investigative reporters, Kate McClymont,
Kayla Whitbourne, get in there
if you're listening.
No, and that is a shame because obviously the Sharks put a lot into this thing.
Well, they dipped into their own pockets to make it happen.
Yeah. But they did have all that money from the premiership, though.
Well and truly deserved. We waited a while.
And they, and then everyone behaves themselves, so they're not forking up $250,000 after every postseason celebration like some clubs are. Now, you and a lot like Ruan Sims come from a family of boys. She actually comes from a family of like professional athletes. All the brothers are playing, aren't they?
Yep.
Like, even right now, they're all playing.
Yep,
Your brothers, at what point did you start overpassing them, just flying past them?
Oh, my brothers all played rugby league at a different point in time, but they all stopped. So even just in junior rugby league, I played from 5 all the way through to under 12. So none of them did that.
Yeah.
They're all so different.
Yeah.
All love their footy. My older brother was really good at cricket.
Yep.
My 2 younger brothers, Kurt, who's under me, he kind of moved to AFL after a while. He's got like a really tall, lean physique, perfect for AFL.
He gets
and
folded,
then my youngest
playing
brother,
rugby league.
Yeah. None of us have too much beef on us, so that probably wasn't great for the boys, to be fair to them. But my youngest brother, Mitch, he probably played for the longest after me. But we were always playing in the backyard. That was how Mum got me to finish my dinner. She said, if you finish your broccoli, you can go and play in the backyard or you can go play knee footy with the boys in the lounge room. So we've always loved it and always played it at home. But yeah, I think I probably just had the biggest passion for it, I guess, out of us kids. I was always the most feral too. Yeah. Which is pretty standard.
Yeah. Well, Ruan's, her brothers those are big boys. Tarek and
yeah, they are.
And Ashton, they are big boys. So they could probably keep moving forward with it too. Now, we've seen in sport there is that idea of some of the greatest things will come through team sport, and sometimes there'll be blow-ups. And everyone who's played sport, and I imagine professional sport is much worse, have seen the red mist where they might not be behaving. What are your thoughts on Serena? Because she had the red mist, and it's obviously turned into something else. So you don't need to really don't worry about the cartoons or anything that's come since then. But do you, what are your thoughts on how that all came to play?
When I heard her speaking, to be honest, I just heard her passion. Mm-hmm. And I guess that's where it stemmed from, was just the passion. She doesn't believe that she's a cheater.
Yep.
I wouldn't cheat. And that's, I guess, what I think she's been pretty hard done by. Mm-hmm. She probably, if she could go back, she might not have conducted herself the same way. But certainly when you put everything into one game, because it is match by match, especially for tennis players, when you put everything into one thing, it's your whole world for that period of time. So I think that just reflected how much she puts into a game and her passion, and that she truly knows that she isn't a cheater. So I don't know that it reflected the right way and that she probably conducted herself perfectly, but for me it just shows how much she puts in, how much she cares, and that's kind of how it was reflected, I guess. Yeah.
You've given a referee a spray before as well?
I don't know. I'm actually pretty good.
Yeah.
Maybe a call. Yeah,
Get him
I'm
on
pretty
side.
good. Yeah, to the referees, definitely. To the opposition, not so much.
Yeah.
I cannot banter on the field because I am so much more than everyone.
Yeah.
And I will literally I already get beaten up.
Yeah.
So I have to be pretty smart with what I say to who.
Yeah.
So the ref's probably my safest option out there.
Yeah.
But no, I'm pretty good. There's definitely been a couple of slip-ups. I was worse when I was younger.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly since I've grown up, I was a little bit better. But I was pretty shocking when I was a kid, actually. Yeah. But I think I matured with age slightly, I hope.
Do you think, what do you think of the way the AFL have done their women's program?
Love it.
Do you love it? Do you think there's anything that the NRL can kind of take from that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that they produced, they provided the structure of how to do it. And I think that the AFL in general do that. You turn on your TV on grand final day and you watch the AFL, and even just going back to the media side, what we were talking about before, people covering the game, whether they be journos or whether they be analysts of the game, there's a 50-50 split of men and women. And then just the way that they do the pre-game entertainment, then the match, I think that the AFL do it very well. And I don't think there's any real reason to have a look at their structure and say, well, let's not do it like that just because we'll be copying them. Let's look at it and say, hey, they've done pretty well. Why don't we use that and not come up with our own? There's definitely different ways that I would have done the women's NRL competition.
Yep. Would have included Cronulla.
But yeah, definitely would have included Cronulla. I probably would have changed the whole game in a sense.
Yeah.
But the fact that it's out there and it's happening, that's the most positive thing.
Yeah.
And just the fact that they've started it, they can certainly, and I'm sure that they will and they're going to, make a fair few adjustments and changes and to continue growing the sport. But I'm just over the moon excited that they've actually done it, and it's a starting point.
So there's one thing I'd like to know. Hypothetically, if you still had your knees of steel, would you play for the Dragons?
Nah.
No.
You'd be sitting out anyway. You'd be waiting.
Well, I'd take any opportunity I could to play, but...
You go to England.
Yeah, no. I think I'd... Yeah, no.
Just wait it out, because there's 8 teams.
I wouldn't wait it out. No way. I'd be playing.
Yeah.
I was brought into a conversation this year about helping coach the Roosters, so that probably would have been the most likely outcome, being a part of that. But if the Warriors said, hey, we want you to come over, I'd say, yep, let's go.
Yep.
Like, I'm all for trying something new as long as I'm out there playing footy.
And building the game.
And also I really enjoy learning off new coaches. So if I could go over there and play with new women, learn from them on the field and in training, and then having a new coach, I would have taken that with both hands for sure.
Well, there's 8 teams now in the women's AFL teams in their competition, and 2 more are joining next year, and then 4 more in 2020, and that's basically a full draw.
Yeah.
Is the women's league moving along at that pace, or is it still trying to find its feet, really?
Do you know the most frustrating thing about, and I don't play a role in the process of the NRL and how they're doing it, but for me, being a supporter of the game and being passionate about women's rugby league, the most frustrating thing is that there's no strategic plan.
Yeah.
So they can't tell us or anyone what's happening next year.
Yeah.
And that's what I want to see. And I think that's what the AFL have done really well, is they've got their plan. They've had it from the start. A lot of people say that the women's rugby league this year might have been a little bit rushed. I don't think it was rushed. I think the timing was perfect.
Yeah.
Because women's sport in Australia and the world is exploding, and
Yeah.
this is the right time now. You've got the people here, you've got the players, you can do it. But yeah, I just find it hard to... I'm a very goal-orientated person.
Yeah.
And even just being a supporter of the game, I want to know what's happening, what's coming up, being
I
able
can
to
imagine,
talk about
yeah.
it, being able to promote it, being excited for the women, being excited for the young girls playing. You know, if you go and watch a under 16s game and say, hey, in 2 years' time, this is what the women's NRL is going to be doing. We can't even have those conversations yet because we don't know. So that's what I'd like to see out of the NRL is a strategic plan.
Yeah.
Can you tell us just quickly, like you were saying, you kind of got scouted from OzTag to play rugby sevens. With you know, there's a lot of young girls playing sport quite competitively in Australia. Where do you think rugby league could start looking as well, just to bring a few? Look, do many other sports you can see the talent? Obviously, you know, there's the rugby codes, but how do netballers go out there?
We don't have too many netballers.
Yeah, they don't usually make the cross. They don't code hop that much.
No, well, until this year, there hasn't been a reason for it.
Yeah.
Because what are the incentives to come to rugby league if you
Yeah.
haven't grown up loving the game?
Yeah, right.
Those
The money,
incentives
maybe?
will come now.
Yeah.
As a result of the women's women's NRL competition being on free-to-air TV, which is massive, and the game growing and sponsor opportunities, and certainly being able to be paid to be an athlete. But I think they haven't. Those opportunities haven't been there in the past, so you don't see too much of that. A lot of the women that play rugby league now have either just joined in the last couple of years, like the younger girls, the girls that are around their 20s, they've just joined in the last year or two. There's not many of us that played when we were younger with the boys, just because it was never as common. But I think in terms of which codes to get people from, rugby union's a no-brainer.
Yep.
But then also your touch, your OzTag,
Yeah.
beach sprinters.
Yeah.
Like Elliot Green, you mentioned her name before, rugby seven, she was a sprinter.
Right.
Yeah.
Power athlete.
She's
Yeah,
so goddamn
Power
fast.
athlete.
Very quick.
Charlotte Caslick was touch footy. Emma Tornagato was touch footy. Football backgrounds, like different codes of footy, that certainly helps because you've got those skills. But if you're a professional athlete, you can teach someone how to catch and pass. And if you're a netball player and you want to come and have a crack at rugby league, you can do that.
Yeah.
Because you understand how to analyse a game. You're just transferring those skills over to something else.
Now, just lastly, we'll let you go in a second. Who do you reckon's got this year in the remaining comp?
In which, men's or women's?
Both.
Men's, I like Souths.
Yep.
I think on their day, they have the most creative and the most challenging attack. It kind of just comes back to how they're performing and how they turn up. I think that they're a very confidence-based football side, but when they turn up and they're packed with confidence, the players on their team and just the threats that they have all across the field, they're looking to score on any tackle from any point of the field. And they can be absolutely brutal to an opposition out there.
Just
so I think
GI in himself
they're
when
the
he's
most
on his own.
threatening.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. They're the most threatening side to me, but they're also very beatable. And I think that firstly comes to just getting in their heads and kind of shutting them down.
Find a chink in the armour.
I'd love to see a South Roosters grand final. I don't know if that'll be the case this year. But then for the women's, at the moment, we've only seen one round so far, but at the moment, I think it'll probably be Broncos Warriors. But Broncos are looking pretty good out there. Their forwards are pretty strong, but their hooker, Brittany Brayley, is a genius out of dummy half, and their half, Ali Brigginshaw, reads the game as well as Joey Johns did. So
Queenslanders as well. So
I know. It's hard for me to say, don't you worry. But they're probably my top contenders at the moment.
Okay. Well, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
This has been a great chat, and let's get Cronulla back in there. Let's
I
the
know.
powers that be.
That's what we
Hopefully
do.
they're listening. Yeah, they might be listening. Let's get the Shire back in there. Let's get Townsville.
Let's grow this game.
Let's grow this game. Thanks for
right.
joining us. And that's it this week for the Betoota Advocate Radio Show, or the Betoota Advocate Podcast if you're tuning in online. Remember, we are going on tour at the end of the year. Please come along. Tickets are flying out the door. You can get them at www.betootaadvocate.com/roadshow. That's it for this week from us. I'm Clancy Overall. You be kind to each other.
And I'm Errol Parker. Make sure to never talk to the police without a lawyer present and stay out of the pokies. Until next week.